Thank you.
A very good evening to everyone out there. Myself, Joya Khan, Ambassador of Change from Getty, and your host for this evening. If you want small changes, work on your behavior. If you want quantum leap changes, work on your paradigms. So far, Stephen R. Covey. My dear viewers, I extend a very, very warm welcome to you on this live forum of Detox, where we invite renowned bureaucrats, policymakers, educators, entrepreneurs from all around the globe. And that's what Getty is all about. Getty, a name to reckon with, where excellence is a continuous process and not an accident, where the things you do for yourself are gone, but the things you do for others remain your legacy. So, with this, as we usher in winds of change, I feel delighted to warmly extend a very, very warm welcome to our esteemed speaker for this live session, Mr. Jason Sandler, who is joining us all the way from Cape Town, South Africa. He is a therapist and will be condensing his thoughts on stress management. Mr. Jason has had an exceptionally interesting turn of events in his life, and yet he has overcome all the obstacles that have fallen in his path. He believes that we all have the power within ourselves to be and do all that we want. His passion is helping people to unlock their full potential using the power of their own minds. He also knows the importance of taking a serious issue and making it into something entertaining and educational. And one of the serious issues, my dear friends, is of stress, which has almost become a second part of ourselves in this fast and mad racing that we are challenging in our lives from day to day chores. It almost has also become like a second self to most of us. Rather than learning the ability to manage stress, we are donning it as an attire. But today, my dear friends, we don't need to worry so much because we have Mr. Jason with us who is able to help us and surely will put across his views on how to cope up with the stress rather than, donning it as an attire all your life and not enjoying life the way we should be. So, a very warm welcome to you, sir, once again on this live forum, and over to you without further delay.
Thank you so much for that beautiful and wonderful introduction, Joya. I really appreciate it. In fact, you've made me excited enough to wonder if I'm going to be excited with what I'm going to be sharing with everybody today as well. I just want to launch my, I just want to quickly launch my PowerPoint. Just give me a moment, if
Sure,
you
sir.
don't mind. And there we go. So there I was, lying in a bed. And then I woke up and I looked up. And as I looked up, I looked at the ceiling and that's not the ceiling of my bedroom, yet I'm lying in a bed. And I was confused and I didn't understand it. What was going on? And the next thing, a very friendly, smiling face appeared in front of me. It was a lady. She smiled at me and she said to me, "Oh, someone's awake." I looked at her and she obviously picked up the confusion in my eyes. And she said to me, "Jason, you're in hospital." "What? Why? How? What's going on?" "You were involved in a motor vehicle accident." "Oh, is Lisa was my fiance at the time. Is Lisa okay?" "No, no, she's fine. You were alone in the car." "Okay. Well, have you got a telephone so we can phone her and tell her what happened?" "Oh no, she knows what happened." "Why? How does she know?" "You've been here 3 months." "What?" Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I was in hospital for 3 months without even knowing it. My heart started beating fast and faster. My mind started racing. I cannot explain to you how high and overwhelming all of my stress levels became at that moment in time. And it only got worse from there, the stress levels, that is, because I discovered that I needed to learn how to walk again. I discovered that I'd lost 3 months of my life. And all of these things created all of the stress for me. And I looked at all of this and I said to myself, what can I do about it to empower myself rather than just being a victim? And so my stress management journey began. But all journeys have got to start with a point, and all points start with a story. And for those of you who are parents, you should know that every story that's a good story starts with once upon a time. So, once upon a time, many, many years ago, when I was only 5 years old, my parents took me to one of the national monuments here in Cape Town, the castle. And we went and we did the tour of the castle and we looked around and it was great and it was interesting. But then my parents decided they wanted to sit down and have a cup of coffee. So they went to go and sit down and have a cup of coffee. And I had myself a cool drink. But they were sitting and talking, and I was a 5-year-old kid and I was getting bored. So my dad said to me, "You see that cannon over there? Just go play by the cannon." So off I went and I played by that cannon. And then next to the cannon, I saw the pile of cannonballs. And I went up to the cannonballs and I tried to pick one up. And it didn't matter how hard I tried, it didn't matter how much effort I put into it. I could not get that cannonball to even budge at all. It wouldn't move. It was way too heavy for me. And time moved on. Recently, I decided to take my son to go and see the castle. And we did the tour and we did everything. And then we are sitting having a cup of coffee. And he did exactly the same as what I did. "I'm bored. I want to do something." And I said, "You see that cannon over there? Go and play there." And then I remembered and I decided to go to him. And I walked up there to where my son was by the cannon and the cannonballs. And I bent down and I wrapped my hands around that top cannonball and I tried to lift it. And guess what? It didn't budge at all. It didn't move at all. But I smiled and I remembered. And what did I remember? I remembered and I smiled because it was a case of I couldn't lift it when I was 5 years old. And as a much older man now, very close to retirement age, I still got the same strength I had when I was 5 years old. Now, that may sound like an interesting story, but the lesson in that is a very simple one. Do you want to be the same, whether you are 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40? Or do you want to evolve and change with every year? And if you want to evolve and change with every year, yes, you will come across stress because it means you've got to step outside of your comfort zone. And as we all know, a comfort zone, although it's a beautiful place, nothing can grow there. We need to step outside of our comfort zone. We need to face something new, face a fear, feel that stress so that we can learn and grow and expand our comfort zone. So, do you want to be like the 5-year old you when you are 30, 40, 50, 60, or even older? Or do you want to grow? And if you want to grow and you want to make positive changes in your life, stick with me for a few minutes more. So many people, when they hear the word stress, they think of negative things. Because, yes, stress is negative. But there is another word that I want you all to learn, and that word is eustress. And what is eustress? Eustress is stress that creates positive results. It's a positive form of stress. Now, you might be saying, a positive form of stress? What is that, Jason? Eustress is what drives you, motivates you, and pushes you to meet that deadline at work. Or if you're a student, that last minute push to get that project or assignment completed, or that last minute push just before you write your exams. Eustress is a positive stress. I want you to think for a moment about crossing a road. What do you do when you come to a road and you want to cross it? Well, you look to make sure that it is safe for you to cross. And then when you know it's safe for you to cross, you go and you cross that road. No stress. But all of a sudden you hear a car with a roaring engine. Your stress levels go up slightly. Now, that is eustress that made you look before you crossed. Take a road that you cross regularly. How much will your stress levels climb if you were blindfolded and told to cross that road? Whether there were any cars or not is completely irrelevant. And what we need to do is we need to understand the difference between stress, which is a negativity, and eustress, which creates a positivity. Eustress can be defined as something that causes stress in our life that pushes us to do something to eliminate that stress. I'll say that again. Eustress is stress that causes us to do something positive in our life that will eliminate that stress. Whereas stress is a feeling, a thought, and an emotion, often of frustration and overwhelmedness, where we can't see a solution. But fear not, because I'm here to offer you one. One of the issues around stress is we wear it like a badge of honor. How many times do you meet somebody and you say, "How are you doing?" They go, "Oh, I'm full of stress. I am so stressed," as if it's something to be proud of. In America, they've done studies, and stress is the leading cause of all physical and emotional illnesses in the world. The biggest leading cause of heart problems is through excess amounts of stress. Now, you might meet somebody one day who says, "I can teach you how to eliminate all of the stress out of your life." Here's the truth: there will always be stress. Unless you live in a cocoon, in a bubble, with no interaction with the outside world at all, there will be stress. What we need to learn is not how to eliminate stress, but how to manage the stress. Because when we can manage the stress, it becomes controllable. And when it is controllable, it cannot be overwhelming. Stress has a huge impact on our lives on a physical and emotional level. Look at these two pictures of Barack Obama. The first picture was on the day of his inauguration. The second picture was 6 years later. Now, yes, he's 6 years older, but look at the difference. Is being the president of a country a stressful job? For sure it is. There is your proof. But beyond that only being your proof, we know it is a stressful job. We know that these things have impacts on our body. Why? Because stress releases different chemicals into our system, and we need to learn to control it. I'm going to tell you how right now. On your screen right now, you're going to see one word, three letters. AHA. A H A. That is an acronym. An acronym, just in case you are not sure what an acronym is, an acronym is a bunch of letters that make a word when put together. And each letter stands for something. AHA. So what does that stand for? The first A stands for acknowledge. The H stands for hesitate. And the second A stands for action. Acknowledge, hesitate, action. But what does this actually mean? You might be wondering. Well, let's unpack each one of those. The first A, acknowledge. We need to learn to be more honest with ourselves and for ourselves. When we've got stress, when things are not going 100% how we want them in our lives. We mustn't just ignore it. We mustn't just push it away. Because when we push it away, all we're going to do is move it to a later time when it is going to be even worse. There's a beautiful saying that goes, building a mountain out of a molehill. It is far easier to deal with it when it's still small than to wait for it to grow and grow and grow before we can deal with it. So acknowledge what the problem is. Acknowledge what is causing the stress in your life and acknowledge that you have the stress. But when you're acknowledging it, you're not just going, yes, I've got stress. Unpack. What is that stress? What is causing it? Actually understand what it is that you are feeling and the why you are feeling it. That's all about acknowledging. Then we move to the H. And the H stands for hesitate. And hesitate means you stop doing something. When we have stress, one of the worst things that we can do is just be reactive and react to things and try and fix them on the fly. That doesn't work. We've got to plan things properly. So we need to hesitate. We need to stop. We need to think. And we need to plan what we're going to do. Because we need to plan what we're doing so that we can overcome all these things that are causing the stress. And when we do that, we formulate that plan in our mind. Instead of just reacting, we formulate a plan. Because when we formulate a plan, we can overcome it far better, firstly. And secondly, we can learn a way of dealing with it before it causes the stress the next time you're in a similar situation. And then we move to the second A. And the second A stands for action. Now that you've acknowledged what the problem is, now that you've unpacked it and you understand what that problem is, now that you have stopped and you've planned and you've thought and you know exactly what needs to be done, now and now only, you do the action to overcome, to take back control of your emotions, your thoughts, and your feelings. I want you all, from now on moving forward, I want you all, whenever you are encountering anything that falls into your definition of stress, to go, aha, I have a solution. Let me put this in a practical term for you and a practical way for you. With COVID, so many people got into trouble financially, with job losses, with businesses closing, etc., etc. So it's a very apt example to use. Comes the end of the month, you don't have enough money to pay all of your accounts. You maybe are struggling to pay the rent for your accommodation or any of those things. And you're now sitting with all of this financial burden on you. Feels like there is 1,000 kilos on your shoulders just weighing you down. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't become an emotional shopper or an emotional eater. Don't hide when someone phones you and your phone rings and they're going, hi, when are you going to pay your account? But not answering the phone, you're not fixing it. By ignoring them, you're not fixing it. So acknowledge, this is what my situation is. This is what I can afford. This is how I'm going to deal with it. This is how I can make extra money. Or this is how I'm going to speak to the people. Acknowledge what the actual problem is. It is not that I'm lazy. It is that I became unemployed because of all the lockdown and the problems during COVID, as an example. Now that you understand what the real problem is, you move to hesitate. Okay, what can I do to fix it? Well, it's not helping to ignore the phone calls or the emails that come in demanding the payment. But if I contact the people and I explain the situation to them, maybe it'll make them understand better, and maybe they'll be willing to make some kind of a payment plan with me or extend the period of time that I can pay over, which means smaller payments. Maybe the plan is to look for a new job or a second job or to go speak to my boss about getting an increase. You hesitate, you plan and you plot. Aha! I've now know what I need to do. So I can move to the third letter, the second A, and action. Because I now know what to do. So I start actioning those things. I start doing them. We can't pretend these things don't exist because it just will get worse and worse. And then what? Even more worse. So we acknowledge, we hesitate, and then we do our action. And when we do it that way round, we're not fixing the problem, we're dealing with the problem. And our stress levels will automatically go down. And the minute your stress levels go down, your health goes up because our health will always improve when we are not overwhelmed with stress. Human beings, that's us. We're strange and we're funny. Whatever we focus on is what we will find we manifest and create in our lives. And if we go through life always seeing things from a pessimistic perspective and everything is negative and everything is wrong and I'm stressed by this and I'm stressed by that, we will only allow ourselves to see the stressful things in life. And if all we can see is the stressful things in life, we will spend all of our time feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, and it'll just breed more stress and more stress. And we start layering it all on top of each other. This doesn't mean that we must be optimistic and have our head in the clouds and not face the realities. But what we need to do is face the realities in a way where we say, here is a fact. Here is what I can do. Here is what I can try do. I'm going to pull aha into this. Why? Because it empowers me. Rather than allowing the situation to control me, I am going to take back control of the situation. And when we can do that, when we understand that, we realize that the control comes all the way back to us. And that is what is key. That is what is so immensely important in our ability to manage our stress. So, what I want everybody to understand is that we as people don't even realize how much potential we all have. A lot of people say we must feed the mind. They're right. But what are we feeding the mind? And if we are feeding the mind positivity, then it is positivity that we are going to have in our life. And it's positivity that we're going to be pulling in our life. If we feed it with negativity, then we're going to see the negative in everything. And when we see the negative in things, that's when our stress levels just expand and expand and expand more and more, further and further. So, where does this take us to? Very simply, it takes us to this: the strongest muscle in our body is the one between our ears. We need to learn to use it properly. Whatever you perceive, your body will conceive, as the last slide said. And so, what we need to do is we need to make sure that what we perceive is positivity. Stress is the number one killer in America, or the number one catalyst to create other medical conditions that are always going to be stress related. And all we need to do is be realistic and manage it. Not unrealistic and eliminate it, because that, if we try to just eliminate all stress in our lives, we will be on the losing side all the time. And the minute you're on the losing side all the time, what's going to happen? You're going to give up and say, that's life, just accept it. But if we look at it from the perspective of learning to manage that stress, what will then happen is we start empowering ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, aha, and empower ourselves. Nobody has the right to control you besides you. Claim that right and start taking back control. And easily and effortlessly, with something as basically simple as the aha, you're taking 2, 3, 4, and 5 huge steps to taking control back in your life. I hope that you use these tools. And I can open the floor up for any questions.
Thank you so very much, sir. Let me say this is an aha moment for me. And let me also quote a few lines about stresses that get your stress wings and let it fly away. And let us stop focusing on how stressed we are. Rather, let us focus on how blessed we are. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. And it is also said that a good way to overcome stress is to help others out of theirs, just like what you are doing in the present time. In times of great stress, sir, or in times of adversity, it's always best to keep busy, to plow your anger and your energy into something positive, into something constructive. Because to achieve great things in our life, we need two things, especially a plan and also enough time, so that even if we have to come out of our comfort zone, as you said, we don't start stressing because we become so used to our comfort zone that all the stress starts showing right from our face to our whole personality. It is also said that one of the best pieces of advice that we ever got was that it's not our stress that kills us, it is our reaction to it. And if we want to conquer the anxiety of life, let us live in the moment, live in the breath. Let us also learn to say a big no. Sometimes, sir, what we do is out of, sheer, say, mannerisms, out of sheer curtsies, we always, exceed to other people's demands, saying a yes to invitations where we actually should say no, saying a yes to demands where we actually have a right to say no. So, learning to say a no also relieves us of different kinds of stress. Stress is simply the adaptation of our bodies and minds to change. And let us say a yes to that change. It's very much needed in today's hectic life because it is not stress that kills us, it's our reaction towards it. So, very beautifully, you have condensed your thoughts. And I feel that we have to adopt the pace of nature. Learn something from nature which says, patience, my dear friend, patience. Calmness, my dear friend, calmness. Because once we learn to be calm and patient, we bid stress a big goodbye at times when it tends to overpower us and overwhelm us. Stress is real, we can't deny it, but we always have a choice that we need not allow it to consume us. Rather, we learn to control it. Let us not learn stress to control us. Let us not learn stress to overpower us. Because if we do that, surely stress will be the real killer and the winner. The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater his success, his influence, and his power for good. So let's, every time we stress, let us take a deep breath and just say, it's not a bad life, it's just a bad day. Probably it's just a little bad moment, and this too shall pass. We should always remember. Because no situation is permanent, nothing is there to last. So let's just enjoy wherever we are, in whatever position we are in. With this, sir, there are a few questions that come to my mind. What is your personal experience about the most stressful situation that you have faced in your life, and how have you overcome it?
Okay. So, Joya, before I answer your question, I love everything that you have shared now. And I'll come back to that afterwards. But just by saying that one of the key fundamentals is learn to fall in love with yourself.
Oh, yes, I agree.
And I'll talk more about the other things that you said. But to answer your question, the most stressful situation I've ever faced in my life is what I started my presentation with today with me in hospital. That is a 100% true story. I was in a motor vehicle accident. Yes, we're online. You can't see now, but I walk with the walking stick and everything. I can't walk, and I'd spent a year and a half learning how to walk again. So yes, that was the most stressful situation I've ever experienced in my life. How did I come over it? All of the things that I've written in my book, I'll tell you about my book in a moment, are the steps that I took and implemented them in my life. Because that's the whole big thing. It doesn't help to just know the things, you've got to do them. And by implementing all of those steps, I realized what a change it made in my life, what a positive change it made in my life, which is one of the reasons why I focus so much on teaching others about stress. So, the book that I've written, I'll do a quick advert for it. It's available on Amazon. You can download it off Amazon. The book is called From Stress to Success, the A to Z of Stress Management. And each letter of the alphabet stands for a different technique. So, for example, the A in my book is acknowledge. The B is all about breathing. You spoke about taking deep breaths and breathing. So, it's all about breathing. And not only does it teach you the right way to breathe, but it explains why breathing is beneficial for stress management. And each letter stands for something else as part of the journey of stress management. When I did my talk now, you're limited with time. Otherwise, it's a 2-day event. I chose, I chose three things from that book: acknowledge, hesitate, and action to share. But there are all these other ones there, and what you were sharing touches on almost all of the other ones down the line.
Thank you so much, sir. Also, what advice do you would you give to calm down a colleague who's stressed out about a particular deadline?
That's a very good question, and my answer to you is going to be a very, very simple one. And a lot of people will listen to my answer and they'll say, that sounds too simple. But when you make it simple, it works. Because it's simple, it's easy to implement as well. And very simply, it is a double thing. One, change your environment for a moment. And two, breathe. So, what does that mean? They got the strict deadline. Stand up from your computer, walk outside, get some sunlight, yeah, unless it's the middle of winter, I guess. Take a few good deep breaths, and I'll tell them how to breathe properly. And then, with a clear head, come back inside, sit down, and be productive.
Thank you, sir. And one more thing is that we can't deny that we can run away from stress. But then, how do you prevent any situation from getting too stressful to manage?
Have you ever heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child? The part of the problem is, and I said it earlier on, people wear stress like a badge of honor. But the other thing that they do is when they're completely overwhelmed by stress, is they pretend it isn't existing and it doesn't exist, or it's a secret and they hide it. Yet if they just turned to other people, it is amazing that how many, and it's a majority of people in human nature, want to help, but they won't help unless you ask for the help. So it's all about just saying, there's always the sun will go down, always the sun will rise. Your attitude towards that sunset and that sunrise will make it a beautiful one or an ugly one. And change your attitude. You can't change the situation, you can change the way you perceive and react to the situation. So when you're feeling completely overwhelmed, I firmly believe in the saying that goes, to share a burden is to halve a burden. Just share it. You don't need to get answers from the people sometimes. You just need to allow them to offer you an ear to talk to and a shoulder to lean on.
Very, very well answered, sir. And what I can gauge from your answers is that stress acts as an accelerator. It will either push us forward or backward. But it is we who decide which direction to take and how much permission do we give stress to overwhelm us and to overpower us.
100%. And that's why I always say it's not about stress elimination, it is about stress management.
It's stress management, absolutely, sir. So that's very, very positive and very well worded, very relevant, and each point could be related to the basics that we face each day. Now, since we are in the field, in the business of education and in the field of academics, we as educators and as parents have an immense responsibility to mold the personalities of the present day young generation, our ignited minds, And what we see around us, that this generation is under immense stress. It may be stress to compete with the peers. It is their status stress. It is the different kind of peer level stresses,
Yes.
the academic stress, the financial stress, you name it, and the stress is there.
Hmm.
Now, what advice do you give to our young students in this present scenario?
Learn to pace yourself and learn to make yourself a priority. Stop chasing materialistic things and chase happiness.
Beautiful, beautiful, I must say. If our dear viewers are listening carefully, I think half the stress washes away from here only. So what I got to learn is that I always believe in is learn to love yourself, as you just said.
Yeah.
Make yourself a priority. Choose the pace of life which you can cope with. Never try to compete with others. Try to compete with your own self. Learn to better your best. Because if we keep competing with others, we shall never be satisfied. Somebody is always there on the scene who is better than me. So it's better that I learn to compete with myself. And of course, learn to build up patience, calmness, and a feeling of contentment. So, thank you
I
so very
love
much.
what you said.
Thank you so very much, sir, for taking out
Thank you.
time and being with us on this live forum of detox. And we were really, really glad to have you with us. I
Thank
also
you.
would
I
like
appreciate the time.
I also would like to thank our dear viewers who are with us this evening and who will be seeing later on. So I hope they all have wonderful takeaways. And I look forward to meeting you again on this platform another day with another thought provoking session,
I
and
would love it.
which will truly prove beneficial for all of us. Thank you so
Thank
very much, sir.
and
Thank
thank
you,
you
dear
so much,
viewers.
Joya. And thank you, everybody. I hope that you're going to walk away from this having learned something to implement into your life.
I'm very sure they will. So, thank you, everybody. Stay blessed. Have a wonderful evening, morning, night, wherever you are, any part of the world. Wish you a wonderful time ahead. Stay blessed. God bless.
Cheers, everybody.